you want to see how simple it is to make a cracker that only has 2 ingredients in it, that isn't full of wheat, that isn't full of preservatives, that isn't full of artificial colorings, that doesn't cost very much, that stays fresh, is crispy, delicious. So I'm on a lectin-free diet and I needed to find food that could replace all the wheat-based food that dominates the market. So this is my recipe. So we start off with 2 ingredients. One is almond meal, blanched almond meal, so that it doesn't have lectins in it. And the other is tapioca flour. And that's all I'm going to use today. So let's get cracking. It's easy. Join me. Rightio. So we need a cup of almond flour. And yeah, blanched almond flour. So a cup of that. And of tapioca flour. So yep, looking good. Almost there. These 2 things are available from my bulk shop. I buy them in bulk, stick them in a jar, always having them in the fridge. While I'm thinking of it, I'm going to turn on the oven. So turn it on to a nice hot oven, maybe 200 degrees, and let it warm up a bit. Join those 2 ingredients together like so. And then I'm going to put some iodized sea salt. Iodine's good for you, so I use the iodized one, and try and find a nice Australian salt that's full of minerals. And I probably put, I don't know, about a teaspoon. That looks like a teaspoon. A little bit more. And then I love cracked pepper. So I put cracked pepper in mine. And I also love turmeric. So I'm going to put some turmeric in. So I don't know, teaspoon of turmeric. And stir the ingredients together. Looking fairly simple so far. Okay, all dry at the moment. Now I get my measuring cup and put some water in it. Now I don't know how much water I put in. Okay, there's about 100 mils there, but I wing it. So I add a little bit, start mixing, a little bit more, and it gets real sort of gluggy at first. It sort of goes a bit like, I don't know, what would you call that's really stiff? Gets sort of, and then just a tiny bit more water. Don't go too fast with the water, because what you want, the consistency of this is important. So it starts to loosen up. It's starting to look like that now. Okay, so a bit like a cake mix at the moment. I've still got, I'm going to add a little bit more water, but at this point the water makes it sloppy really quickly. So stir that in and have another think. Get it all stirred in. Looking like that at the moment. I'd like it a bit wetter, just a little bit. So it starts to look a bit like a pancake batter. I think that's going to be pretty good. So sort of pause. I might go a tiny bit wetter. So maybe now that ended up, I don't know, 120 mils or something. Just a tiny bit adding in. Yeah, that's a bit better. It's not as stiff. So now we've got it quite runny. So over here I've prepared 2 baking trays. And I've put some baking paper on top of the trays. I've got nice firm trays, and the baking paper just sits on top. And I pour on the batter. So I put about half on each one, a bit less than half, and then I'll top up the one that's lacking. And just with the back of the spoon, you just spread it around. It starts to sort of move. It wants to come off the tray, especially if your counter's not level. So just keep smoothing it out. You want it nice and thin, but you don't want it so thin that it's not going to be anything. So you want some substance. Spreading it right to the edges. Oh, well, you know, not right to the edges, but you don't want a big pool puddle in the middle. So you want it good. Now I've still got some more batter, so I'll add that in to both of them. Spread it round. Now these crackers are awesome we have them with hummus, with guacamole, with any of the homemade dips I make. Yummy with a bit of blue cheese. Oh, that was a bit sloppy. I made a mess. So that happens. The baking powder, the baking paper, whoop, wants to get involved, wants to join in. So you go, get back there. Pushing it right to the edges. And you don't want any holes in the middle, but nor do you want puddles in the middle. So this takes a bit of practice, because at first you might get it too thick, and then when the crackers are cooked, they might feel a bit thick, or you might get it too thin, and you work that out. Each time you do it, you go, no, I liked it better when it was thinner, or I liked it better when it was a little bit waterier. Of course, you don't want it too thick, otherwise the cracker doesn't have that cracker appeal. Righto, so that's what I've got. You can see what that looks like. Now I'm just going to put that in the oven. Here we go. Simple as that. Okay, now say 20 minutes. I'll have a look at it. So we'll come back and see what happens after 20 minutes. Okay, so 20 minutes later, let's see what happened. Turn my oven down too. I fluctuate between 100 and 150. 175. No, I don't. Stay again. I fluctuate between 200 and 175. So this one got a bit crunchy on the edge. Sometimes I turn my oven down, sometimes I turn it up. It sort of depends how we go. And you need to be able to just slide a flipper underneath that, separate it from the paper, and it's pretty good. Oh, it's still a bit. I'm going to stick that back in the oven for another 5 minutes. If it's cooked enough, it just comes away with the sheet. I separate it from the sheet and make a decision at that point, is it cooked enough or not. I like them really crispy without being burnt. So I'm going to turn that one over. That's another little trick. And bung that one in just for another few minutes. And I'm going to just leave it not too long. I'll get out a cooling tray. I'll leave them for a few more minutes. They're really nice if they're crispy enough. And another way to do that is after about 20-25 minutes at 175 to 200 degrees, I just turn the oven off and I leave them in there. Make sure they don't burn, but that can dry them out more, because if there's any fluid left in the mix, they lose their crispiness pretty quickly. If they're very dry from the cooking process, they'll stay crunchy for several days in an airtight jar. So, and we like them crunchy. So let's have a look and see how they're going. I reckon that looks pretty good. I'm going to put that on a cooling tray. Enough crunch. I always burn myself at this point. Okay, so there's the crackers. Let them cool for a few minutes. Let's have a little taste. Yum. Good. Around the edges, they get a bit crisper. Sometimes the middle, that's a little bit burnt. It's okay though. And the middle might be a bit uncooked, and it's trial and error. Put it back in the oven if you don't like its crispiness. But let's see what this is like. Great. And the last thing I do once they're cool is just break them up and put them in the jar. They could be any shape or size, as long as they fit in the jar. Ends up being a cracker jar. So a really simple recipe, and at the moment we're doing this every day because we enjoy them, and they're a great substitute for all the other stuff we're eating. Voila! And there we have it. Tapioca and almond meal crackers a la Rennie. Thanks.